Hello and welcome to another episode of Business and Bubble Tea. Here on the podcast today, we have with us Waleed Khalid, the founder of Oxford Talks. Waleed, it's great to have you on the podcast with us today.
Great to have you with me as well. Will, absolute pleasure to be on the podcast.
Waleed, welcome to Business and Bubble Tea. And first of all, I would like to ask you a little bit more about your background.
Absolutely. There's so many stories out there, so you got to be more specific. Which particular part you are more interested in?
Let's say more like your academic background. So what did you study?
Sure. So I started. I started with my undergrad at Oxford Brookes University. I started with environmental sciences first because I had a bit of a science background, and then halfway through I realized this isn't for me, and then I shifted towards business and specifically business and entrepreneurship. So that's what I studied up there. And right in my first year of uni, we started this company. At that point in time, it was TEDx Oxford Brookes, and that's how sort of the whole journey started. But I don't feel like, I think that's the case with most entrepreneurs. The academics are not the strongest pursuit when we are heading towards that journey, isn't it?
Yeah, no, exactly. I guess you kind of was it that the academics was interesting, but did you stumble upon the opportunity, or did you meet a friend in a bar and then suddenly this thing kicked off? What happened there?
So actually, the very sad story. I think few things happened, but what stands out the most, what started the whole journey was I wanted to join a lot of societies, and there was this badminton society and cricket, and then you have to do these like crazy trials, and I wasn't actually good at any of those. So I ended up going through the Freshers Week and not being part of any of the societies that I wanted to be part of. And
Gosh,
saying, you know what? I'm going to create my own society, and I'm going to be the president of it. And then I was thinking of like all the different things I'm going to come up with against, and then we decided, okay, let's do the Oxford, the talks thing, like, the public speaking bit. And in that, one person joined us. His name was Laurenti Arnold. He was one of the biggest earlier inspiration. He was studying international luxury marketing up there, but he always used to. Whenever I used to come up with something, he always used to. I run 7 businesses, and this is how it should be done. And I just couldn't find the courage to speak against that for some reason. The guy who runs 7 businesses, what does that mean? So the curiosity started from there. What is it that he has learned from those businesses that I don't feel any courage to speak against about it? So I think that's where it started, and I thought, okay, I'll start running my own business and see how that's gonna. But I think that was the biggest inspiration very early on. Like,
so was it from a position of what I guess gave you that courage? What's the transition that's gone on from the Waleed that started in Oxford to the Waleed now that runs Oxford Talks?
I think of all my life, I always had this, I think from very early on in life, I think I can remember even being like 12, 13, 14-year-old, I had this one notion that, I don't know, if maybe it's parenting and maybe the environment that you grew in. And I still don't know what was that factor, but I always remember that I had that notion that you got to do something which is beyond you, and it impacts a lot of people. Like either it's a product or a service that a lot of people are using, and in a sense that it was always being instilled in me from childhood that the clothes that we are wearing, the food we are eating, the cars we are driving, everything that is making our life easier is made by people who we don't know them. I don't know anyone who made my car and all of these things, but it's helping me do my job better. Can I come up with something that, which is purely mine, and add to that pool of human enterprise, which other people can use and make their life a little bit better? So you always think, okay, what's the biggest thing you can do in that regard? First, I thought, I could study medicine and become a doctor, and that would have a lot of impact in life. So I did, dabble with that a little bit. And afterwards, finally, I think business gives you that sort of bandwidth that you can be all across the globe with one thing or a couple of things or many things, and you can have a lot of impact. And I think at that point in time, in 2009, 10, 11, 12 timeframe, iPhones and iPods and iPads, they were really becoming a huge thing. It's one product and it's being used across the world by all sorts of people. So I think that notion that you want to come up with something my own that a lot of people are going to use and they're going to help improve their life a little bit. That's where it all came from.
And specifically thinking about these impacts that you wanted to create, no? what do you do exactly at Oxford Talks, and how do you want to give this impact and create this impact on people?
My job at Oxford Talks is I call myself a fireman. I put out fires every day. That's the day-to-day job.
Chief fire officer or whatever.
Chief fire. Chief hot guy. But every day to day, my specific title is I work in design and curation, but I think that's just the face of it. What I do specifically per day to day, so curation. So when someone comes up with an idea, that we have a conversation, we onboard them, all this process gets done, and the idea is more or less in a very vague form. They have a certain goal at the end they want to achieve. To extract that information first from another human, they have lived through 20, 30, 10 years of all this sort of life experience. Extract that information, compress it into 10-minute talk, and allow a very careful decompression to happen afterwards. That it's going to be a longer format in a podcast. It's going to be this and this. I think that compression and decompression is what I classify my job is. Get all the information and compress it in 10 minutes and see how carefully you can allow it to sort of decompress so people can understand. So that's at the very core, that's one of part of the jobs. Another part which it doesn't get normally discussed, and I don't think a lot of people see it as well, is like, I feel like my job now these days to be at the forefront of what's happening with media as media tools, but at the same time technology as well. So you got to have a very deep understanding of even smallest of things, which camera to use at which angle, so it's going to make the person look magnanimous. Unless you have that perspective, someone's going to be talking about, oh, I raised $60 million in Series A. If you use a top-down camera at that moment in time, you're giving a very weird feeling, or 60 million might not be that much. But if you're using a down camera pointing towards up them, I raised 25 pounds from charity. Oh my God, that sounds like 25 million.
Incredible. I mean, it almost sounds like the kind of, I guess, the Top Gun shots of Tom Cruise, I guess. From down up, right?
I thought it was so captivating that you understand this. And then with cameras, there's so much technology you can use. And now we have the Web3 and, how this experience is going to, because cameras are sort of, they capture everything in 2D, but now we have the 3D immersion coming up and everything. How you're going to tell incredible stories, but at the same time, go one step beyond, which is not, you just don't use media technology and all your sort of experience to tell a story and just leave it there. The biggest chunk of work now, which is kicking in, is how to make it a reality. I've listened to this podcast. I've listened to Will and everything, and he's prompted me a certain action. How I'm going to go about that action? Will wants the world to be a better place, and this is his idea, and I love that idea. But I want to participate. But there's just so much confusion out there about the action part, and we feel like with Oxford Talks, if we can bridge that gap between ideas worth spreading and ideas worth actually doing, I think if we can do that, that would be great at the end of the day.
So you touched on a little bit on this idea of Web3.
Yeah.
So I just want to quickly ask you, where do you see Oxford Talks going with ideas worth spreading and I guess the advent of Web3 technology?
Very specific answer to that. So I first order of business is to finish the project that we're currently on. Just to tell you a little bit about to the listeners, the project's called Brave New World. We are going around the world in 35 countries and 50 cities, and we're looking at 2,500 great ideas, which are ideas worth doing, which can people can take action upon. So already we have Oxford done. We have filming soon in December. So all of that is happening. How Web3 is helping that transition? We feel like Oxford Talks is one of its kind as a company that one of the basic pledges we made when we started this project, that we're not going to use any of the traditional advertising. And touching slightly on a bit of a crucial thing up there, that I as an advertiser, why we want to do that? I as an advertiser can go on any YouTube video, how to make a bomb, how to rape a girl, how to incite a riot, any video you can think of from YouTube. You can give me 25,000, 50,000 money, and I can give you 2-3 million views on that video. That's the power I have as an advertiser. Imagine what can be done. And if I'm a malicious person, how much damage I can do with that kind of money. And so we want to kind of break away from that model. I'm 26 at the moment. I don't want to spend my life working in that sort of category of work where the work that I create has the potential to, to do all of that. And the tools I'm using have the ability to make all of that happen. And this is not something I'm coming up with against that. We saw Cambridge Analytica scandals. We
Yep.
saw Capitol Hill riots. They're all the tools which were used are extremely disturbing when they get into wrong hands. So what we decided, how are we going to sort of break away from that model? It is with the Web3 technologies.
Would you say would you say it's a bit of a social contract that you have as an advertiser have with your publics, or
As for the new or for the previous work?
well, for both, because you touched on some quite extreme, I guess,
I think as an advertiser, I think in a mass media machine, the inspiration from that actually came from Noam Chomsky's book of manufacturing consent, like how you can use these tools to sort of create the consent in society. And we've seen numerously, I think, for better or worse reasons. For example, in 70s and 80s, they came, the campaign around milk came around. So no one used to drink milk that much, and they came up with a campaign, got milk, and suddenly, everything got skyrocketed up. So media can influence human behavior to a great extent. The worst part is that there are actors out there which have the same access to these tools, and their intentions are not for the benefit of society. If you're OD and you come up with a great electric car, go advertise the hell out of it. I mean, more people should buy it, or whatever. But the things that I just described to you, if I can use and access the same tools as well, I'm not sure where we're gonna draw the line. I think tech companies and Web2 companies, I specifically must say, they have been on the sort of lagging behind because they expanded so quick. They don't have enough. Maybe I don't know what's the case, but it feels like we are at the receiving end of a lot of bad things because of that. And Web3, the tools. I'm not saying that this is they're going to create a utopia, but it's another chance. It's a reset button. The tools we're going to use now are NFTs, which are completely different. I know a lot of conversation has been had on NFTs, like graphics, but the way we're using them is the specific values which are attached to them. We are making sure that no one creates some false pseudo economics around these NFTs. It feels much more controlled, much more curated. Even just before today's call, I was curating a talk. We have already spent 10 hours curating just 10,000 words. So hopefully, by the time the project ends, Oxford Talks would be a repository of trusted human knowledge. I want to learn more about relationships, or let me find a video on Oxford Talks about it, because you can trust us on that thing. So I think if we can achieve that, that's enough of ideas worth achieving. On ideas worth sort of doing, it's more on the people. We're going to allow it to happen. We're going to make sure that it's well received out there. But unless it doesn't, if it's going to resonate with people, they're going to adopt. If it does not going to resonate with people, we don't want to put £1,000 behind it and say, you have to do this, you have to buy this, otherwise your life is not happy. So I think that's what we're going to stay away from.
And just, I guess, thinking about, you mentioned trust there. Thinking about, I guess, podcasting and spoken media, this sort of thing, what do you think makes a successful podcast or media outlet?
I think authenticity and trust these are the top things, because if apart from trust, what else do we have that we can sell out there? And not even, I think you can't even sort of sell trust. It just gets established out there that you can have a great production quality, but my TED experience has told me that, Simon Sinek's video, which got super popular, starting with why, he's in a dingy room, the lighting is not even that good, and you can barely sort of see him properly. But the idea was so good that he skyrocketed his career. So it's not the physicality of things. We think production might be important, although it is. I think on a grand scheme of things, it is important. But if the content is worth something, and and exactly the same thing I told you, I think the day that happens with your specific podcast or anyone else,
we'll see. We're hoping for it.
It's the same thing. I want to learn about medtech, and Will has all the great guests. Let me go into that. Your podcast becoming a search engine, that's where the trust will kick in. I think that's what we are achieving for, and I personally feel that's the only way forward.
So becoming, I guess, a fountain of ideas, let's say. Sorry, Roberta, you were saying.
I was thinking, because it sounds everything like really good and really inspiring. And I was thinking, maybe looking back at your entrepreneurial journey and looking back at your experience, have you experienced any like difficult periods or years? Yeah, can you tell us a little bit more about that?
I'll tell you the one which was recent episode. It happened last year, actually. So we for 4 years we were working with TED, and then they came back to us and told us we couldn't do the things in a certain fashion that we wanted to do, and NFTs and all these things are not possible. So our whole for 4 years, which I worked on something, I wanted to spend my life up there. Well, after 4 years, everything came collapsing down. Like absolutely, everything went down to zero.
Oh gosh, right, yeah.
So I had maybe 25, 30K in savings. So from September last year till Jan this year, I just spent it all. I was down to like my last 200, 300 pounds in cash savings, just purely working on making Oxford Talks work. First we thought, and I think it was a lot of iterations that first we thought we came up with something as TED Talks like, but creating a TED Talk like brand was, huge, and it's already exists out there. So what's the point? So a lot of iterations happened. I started working with Time Magazine and all of these things. We still, my company, I was still Red Border contributors up there. I think in April, March timeframe, we realized that instead of sort of focusing on what TED is, we should just focus on what we learned from 4 years up there. And what are those list of 10 things we can do better? NFTs and all sorts of small things came up. And after sort of 6, 7, 8 months of working on that, we just expanded to USA. So all of these small sort of successes are just a sort of a seal of approval that the bet that you made on those changes was actually true. So people who are coming on board, they are more or less TEDx speakers, and when we tell them this is the freedom you're gonna get and this is the outcome, they are telling that. So we literally have no mark. I haven't reached out to any single person in the last 3 months. People come, they do the talks themselves, and then they tell their fellow peers that I had such a great experience. You should do the same thing as well. So far, that's how we've been running, and I think that's the greatest seal of approval, that you don't need to do marketing. Although deep down we need to, because it's that.
It's amazing. I mean, referral business, warm leads. So we just have time for one final question, and I wanted to ask: who has there been anyone that's inspired you in particular to go down this route of doing media? Having you've come from doing chemistry at uni, thinking about being a doctor, to running to going to TEDx, now Oxford
Talks. And also
Talks.
maybe considering like the way of NFTs and these like new trends that we see. Also,
sorry, Will, you want to complete your question?
Yeah, sorry. And I just wondered, is there anyone who's, I guess, inspired you to go down this route? Again, NFTs, this new technology, introductions, sort of your Oxford Talks and stuff. You're not just a firefighter, you're also, an entrepreneur. So tell us a little bit more about, what's driven you down this path. Is it someone in particular, or what's caused that?
I think this podcast is happening at a very interesting point in my life, where all my life I had these 4 people that I really looked up to from very child. I can remember being 5, 6 year old and trying to mimic them. These 4 people were at a later stage Elon Musk. At a very earlier stage, it was Steve Jobs. We all got inspired by him and everything.
Yeah.
And then there were 2 Asian folks. There's the Indian actor Shah Rukh Khan, and there's the Pakistani former prime minister. Now he's the Imran Khan. So these are 4 people who they lived larger than life characters. In biggest of them was Imran himself. That he studied at Oxford and he won the World Cup and became Prime Minister of Pakistan, which was like David Beckham becoming Prime Minister of England. So a huge feat to achieve. I think for a very long time I was trying to sort of learn the lessons from there and trying to mimic them in my own life. But I think now I'm at a stage in my life, especially after Oxford Talks, for the first time in life, it feels like everything is my own. That I'm living on my own values that I have created over the few years. So I feel like going forward, the influence is becoming very less now. It's like from 10% down to like maybe 3% now. I still value their great entrepreneurial journeys and the lessons they are sharing with the world. I feel like every human is different. I think you can learn overarching lessons from these giants in the past. But once
Yep.
you are in the field yourself, I think you have to become a giant yourself.
And just a quick
Absolutely.
question, as you as like now becoming a giant, like one quick advice for students or graduates willing to start in their own company. Just one advice from you.
It's the famous slogan from Nike: "Just do it."
Just do it.
Okay.
Love it. Well, Walid, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on Business and Bubble Tea. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, guys. It's great. Thank you.
Thank you so much for me.